How do I start this video? I'm Terence J, and here is an update on my DMT experience and what I've taken away from it. So, if you haven't seen my first video about my DMT experience, I suggest you go watch it. I'll put a link somewhere in the description here. It's a very full telling, but there were one or two things that I left out that I realized over time were pretty significant. So I wanted to share those, and also just how my life has been since my experience. So to begin with, it's been just over 2 weeks. Life is very good. Life is great, actually. We're at like 15 or 16 days. The effects I was left with have lasted, and I can say that my life is still different and it's better. It's just better. At least it is in here. What can I say about all that? You know, as a person who likes to figure things out, I've thought nonstop about my experience pretty much since it happened, and my state of mind, and thinking about that now and how different everything feels, but only in the best, most positive ways. I have an explanation, and it involves a very small, what I felt was a small detail of my journey, but I'm now realizing was actually perhaps the most profound part of it, and I was unaware of it at the time. The one thing that I noticed about my trip, I went and I again watched a bunch of videos, other people's experiences on DMT, and my trip felt very unique in many ways. There were details of it that were obviously very DMT stereotypical, for the lack of a better word. But for instance, one of the most common things that people reportedly see or encounter on their DMT trips are entities or life forces that are communicating with them. So at no point in my trip did I feel like I was encountering entities or another force. There was a point at which I felt that I was another force, but not that I was communicating with it. I was just observing. But then there came a point where I'm coming down from my trip and the visual hallucinations have subsided and I'm becoming lucid. I am firmly planted in reality again. I'm feeling the effects, obviously, still. I felt like I ran 1,000 miles. I ran to infinity and I just had the biggest runner's high you could possibly imagine. My mind is racing, trying to make sense of everything. And as I'm doing that, I have this feeling come over me. And I said it to my friend, and I tried to put it into words, but it was so very difficult to describe, and it will be very difficult to describe now, but I'm going to attempt to do it. If anything was communicated to me, it was this. Felt like I had a thought planted in my head. Not that somebody put it there, but it felt as though a foreign idea, I almost could see it come out of the sky, sort of like a file, and go into my head and unwrap itself in my mind, and it turned into this understanding. It was an understanding, and it said that sensation, all feeling, all emotion is almost a tangible thing, like a piece of paper that you can fold up and you can put it in a box, and that it's insignificant. That's not the right word. It's the only word I can use to articulate the feeling, but that it is it felt very small. The concept of sensation, of all sensation. It was telling me that you can take those things and you can fold them up like a piece of paper and put it in a box. I thought that was such a weird, what? What do you make of that? I remember my friend was like, what? And I was like, I'm not describing this right, but I feel like elements of reality, we have more control over them than perhaps we might perceive. That was the feeling that was emitted to me. Now, I did not know what to make of that at the time. That none of that made sense to me. At the time it felt very insignificant because it was just this small part of my trip. I mean, there's so many things going on, it's hard to be able to completely focus on exactly one, but this seemed like sort of a small residual element, because I remember having the emotion just being like, yeah, okay, I can put emotion in a box. And why I say I feel like that idea was planted in my head is because that is not how I think. That is not an idea that my 40-year-old brain would come up with. And I'm an artistic person. I'm a creative person. I like thinking outside of the box. I know what box I'm in, and I know that that idea came outside of my box. When I woke up the next day, again, still beaming and with this new way of looking at the world, all the positivity, I wasn't equating at the time that I believe that whatever this experience gave me, because I did wake up saying I feel like I had been given a gift of acceptance. And I believe this was another part of that gift. And truly, I believe it was information that was planted inside of me that I needed really bad. Because over the past 15, 16 days since this has happened, I've still been amazingly calm, amazingly peaceful, happy, content, positive. I feel healthy. And I think that I feel these ways. Number one, DMT does, and I think most hallucinogens do naturally rewire your brain. So I think the cyclical way of thinking, it breaks that up. And it does sort of give you a refresher, somewhat of a blank slate. And I do feel like I had my slate blanked out. You know, I do feel it's just like start over, reset. Here we go. You get another chance. So this information that came to me like a zip file, right? That opened in my mind. Not only was something that I now think of from a psychological standpoint, but I believe that from a subconscious standpoint now it is an emotion that is there. It was vital information and it was just given to me. And now I feel it. When I've gotten to these events or these triggers where these negative emotions may come up, I recognize them now and I see them as a sensation, but I recognize that the sensation is not what defines reality. But it's up to the observer to do with that sensation as they so choose. And I can take it and fold it up and I'll put it in a box. Just put that negative shit in a box. And while I'm using the imagery of a box to express to you kind of the feeling, I do almost at times when I would be triggered, I almost visually see myself recognize the sensation and the emotion. Like, I don't know whether it's my subconscious, whether you want to call it your mind's eye, your consciousness, somewhere. I see the emotion come up like a piece of paper, almost like a map with lines and everything scattered all around. And I see myself look at it, and then I fold it up. And I open a little drawer, and I put it in this box, and I close it. And that box is sitting on a table, and that exists outside of here. It's not where we are. And it's where those emotions belong, for me, personally. Talk about a Pandora's box, baby. And before I conclude this video, I do want to mention this one thing that happened over the past 2 weeks. So I have to give a little preface to this. The majority of my life, I've considered myself agnostic, leaning towards an atheist. I've studied lots of religions over the course of my life. I've at one point considered myself a practicing Buddhist for many years. But no matter all of the research I did and all of my experiences in the spiritual realm, I just was bordering towards atheist. You're here, you die, that's it. After this experience, I left with such a clear knowledge that death is not the end. Not to say that it's reincarnation, not to say that it's heaven, not to say that it's anything other than not the end. And obviously I've been thinking about this nonstop. It's one of the first things that I think about when I wake up. So I woke up one day and I was brushing my teeth and the idea of this came into my head. And for a second I went, holy shit, I don't know what I believe. I don't know what I believe. And for a moment I was terrified. It felt like I didn't know my own name. But just like that, the map opened I went, this is just emotion. It doesn't matter. Put it away. You'll figure it out later. And I do again want to just mention that I am not endorsing or promoting the use of any illicit substances, hallucinogens, or anything to that extent for any therapeutic, medical reasons. None of that. This is just a recount of my experience for documentation and for educational purposes, and also for my own archive. I don't think I ever could forget that, but just in case, I need it here. And with that, if nobody has told you I love you today, I love you.